Hello. I'm an artist, which in my case means that I do a lot of drawings. I also run a project called the Mobile Comics Factory. This is it. This is the Mobile Comics Factory. It is what it looks like. It's a painted box that's been bolted to the back of a tricycle. But inside that box is something special. We have a library of comic books and zines. Zines are handmade magazines, in this case, made by local artists. We also have a load of resources and materials on there so that whoever comes to engage with the project can make their own comics and zines, which we then distribute to the wider community. So I get invited to parks, to school playgrounds, youth clubs, classrooms, and all kinds of other public events where I invite young people to free workshops where they can discover their creativity and find their voice through drawing. It's a really fun project, and it's something that has proven to me in new ways just how important drawing is as a tool, and that's kind of what I want to share with you today. When I go into a primary school, the kids go crazy for it. They mob around the trike, and they just can't wait to get hold of some paper and start drawing themselves. But then when I go into secondary schools, and these children get a little bit older, into their teenage years, the reaction is a little bit different. Kids are a little bit more skeptical, as teenagers are with everything, perhaps. It takes them a little bit longer to warm up and to engage with the project. And at that point, a phrase starts to creep in as well, which is this: I can't draw. I wonder, this is mostly of adults, if any of you can empathize with that feeling of not being able to draw. If you feel today like you can't draw, if you've ever felt that way, I wonder if you can just raise your hand now. Yes, so it's fairly unanimous in this room. And that's interesting to me, that there's this increase in that feeling. And we can all empathize with those young people who say, I can't draw. But it bothers me when I hear it from them, because it's not that they're saying, I'm not interested in drawing. You know, that would be one thing to which I could say, well, fair enough, you can't win them all. But to say I can't draw says nothing about drawing, but it says everything about the person, about their confidence in themselves, about their beliefs in their ability and their willingness to take a risk and try something new. And I think that for people so young to be that locked up is a really sad thing, to put it in no uncertain terms. I hear it so often: I can't draw, I can't draw, I can't draw. That it seems to become the very definition of the word drawing. It's their first and last thought on the subject. But the thing is this: that's not true. And I can't is a terrible definition for anything. So what I thought we could do in this room, if you're someone who's got a notebook out taking notes, not only are you really cool, but you can join in with something with me. And if you have pen and paper in your bag, please take a second to get it out. We're going to just do a little something that will demonstrate to all these many young people that I work with that anybody can draw. And while you're getting that ready, I'll just address the folks at home and say, hi, you can join in with this too. Just pause the video, get yourself a pen and paper. We'll all be here when you get back. It's fine. Okay. So we're all more or less ready in the room. What we're going to do is I'm going to give you 3 simple instructions that you're going to have to do your best to interpret on the page. And hopefully, together, we'll all come up with a drawing. The first thing I want you to do is, right in the center of your paper, do a nice big circle. Now, if you're nervous or anxious about drawing a circle, I've got an artist's trick for you. Just do a big capital O instead. That's all I do. And once you've got that, once you've got your circle, you need to find a point within the circle that's roughly halfway between the center and the top. So a point within the circle roughly halfway between the middle and the top. Once you've found that point, just put a nice, neat tick there to show that you've found it. And the last thing I want you to do is going to take these 2 abstract forms and turn them into a drawing. Is putting your pen or your pencil back at the base of that tick on that spot. And then, this is a bit more difficult, this one. Heading off to the right, heading off to the east, as it were, draw a teardrop shape. And once you've done those things, hopefully, if everything's gone to plan and my instructions were clear, you should have all come up with something that looks a little bit like this. Just for fun, I've coloured mine in. So hopefully, most of you will have gone to the end of your drawing and had some thought equivalent to, it's an apple, or maybe you thought, that's a tomato. It's a bit open to interpretation, I'll admit. But it may be you've drawn something that looks completely different to this. That's okay as well. If your drawing doesn't look like this, what you've done is you've drawn an abstract apple, which in many ways, is more impressive and more difficult. If we were in art school, you'd be top of the class. So what this experiment, if we can call it that, demonstrates is two things. Firstly, you can all draw. Even those of you who raised your hand to say, I can't. Well, we've just proved that you can. So either you're all liars, but I don't think that you are, because you look like nice folks, or you were lied to at some significant point during your development. Either by a person who said a cruel word just when you were feeling at your most vulnerable, or you were lied to by culture, a culture which tells us that drawing is all about proficiency. So over here in this category, we have the good drawings. These are the drawings that look like stuff, or they've been nominated some other arbitrary form of artistic merit. And if you can draw like that, you get to continue. But if your drawings fall outside of that box, then culture tells us they're not drawings at all, they're doodles, and they're not to be shared. And so you get cast out, never to pick up a pencil again. The third way you could have been lied to is just by your own subconscious, our own fears and anxieties, causing us to doubt our abilities. Whatever the reason, whatever the source of that lie, I'm not really here to diagnose, I'm just here to observe and show you that it isn't true. You can all draw. It's open to all of us. The other thing demonstrated through this is just what drawing really is. Like I said, for many of the young people I work with, when they say, I can't draw, it seems to become like a definition. And maybe by looking at this, we can find a better definition of drawing, one that does away with any notions of proficiency, any notions of style or aesthetics, any notion of who can and who can't. So I look at this and I think, that's an apple. But of course, it isn't. It's an ink pattern daubed on a sheet of bleached and dried wood pulp. It's worse than that. This is a projection of a digital approximation of an ink pattern daubed on a sheet of bleached and dried wood pulp. It's not an apple, but we say it's an apple because we understand that it's a sign, it's a symbol, it's an icon you can decode. And at its core, that's what drawing is. Some of you got there. That's what drawing is. It's about passing an idea between people. It's about communication. So I think a better definition of drawing is this. Drawings are marks which become vessels for meaning, or containers for ideas. That's how I define it, that's the definition I use. But you could argue that that could also be an equally good definition of writing. Marks as vessels for meaning. So let's think about that. This is another drawing that I did. This is a series of 5 drawings. And together, rather than represent a vague approximation of a physical object, they've been abstracted so they represent the sounds in a word. But they're still drawings. Drawing and writing is connected on a deep, deep level. And I think a good way to think about this relationship between writing and drawing is to think of them as related languages. And just like with spoken languages, there are some ideas that don't translate well between the two. To give you an example, just imagine we were going to go on a journey to somewhere none of us had ever been before. And to help us find our way, would you rather have a map, some kind of visual, drawn representation, to help you find your route where you could take your bearings along the way? Or would you rather have a wall of text with no visual cues giving you your directions? I know which I'd prefer. There are, of course, situations where writing just wins. If you want to reproduce an idea between people with a certain amount of clarity, specificity, and brevity, writing is great for that. Drawing, on the whole, is not so good. It's a much blunter instrument. It's much more open to interpretation. That, of course, makes drawing great for thinking about new ideas or ideas we might not even have words for yet. That's what makes drawing so exciting. So we have these two languages. And depending on the context and the situation we're in, there's going to be times where drawing is better, times when writing is better. But for some reason in our culture, many of us get to adulthood and we've put away drawing like it was a childish thing. And so we continue on with this one form of language, one form of communication through writing, and we find ourselves reaching, not quite able to get to where we want to get to. This is an idea I think my 3-year-old son gets better than most adults. He is capable, if asked, of drawing a pretty good person. So he will put 5 fingers on each hand, 5 toes on each foot. He'll get the facial features in more or less the right spots. He can draw a pretty good figure. But most of the time, he still chooses not to. He is just as happy doing tiny little scribbles and big gestural marks across the page. But I love to watch him draw, because very often when my son draws, he talks to himself at the same time. He tells himself stories or retells things that have happened to him during the day. And as I watch his crayon glide across the page, it's like it's interpreting things that he's saying. It's like watching dance. And so by the time he's finished and he holds up his sheet, you could objectively say it's a bad drawing. It doesn't look like anything. Of course, my parental bias kicks in, and I say, Jesse, that's the best drawing I've ever seen. Let's put it up on the fridge. We allow our young children to draw in that way because we understand that, in a way, they're working out their relationship to the world. When they're very young, that's in a simple tactile sense. How does this material interact when I rub it against this other material? Then as they get a bit older, like I say with my son Jesse, he's working out his relationship to the world. He's working through things that he's learned, working out his responses to them and generating new ideas from that. I think that's an amazing thing, an amazing function of drawing. But for many children, they get a little bit older and they begin to feel that it's very important to stay within the lines. And at that point, something begins to be lost. Something begins to be eroded. That will eventually lead to the teenager that says, I can't draw. And then will eventually lead to the adult sitting in an auditorium thinking, I don't even remember the last time I drew a picture. So it makes me ask a question. What would happen if we never stopped drawing? If we never shut ourselves off to that way of drawing that we allowed ourselves to do when we were young? I suppose maybe that's why great art can inspire us. Many artists able to speak to us about the human condition are just kids that never stopped drawing. Or they're people that rediscovered drawing and creative expression as they got older. Another group of people who still draw as adults would be architects. I think of the Shard, this amazing building in London, this huge shining obelisk towering over the city that speaks a message to anyone who'll see it of a future-focused London. It's an amazing building designed by an architect named Renzo Piano. You can find many of his sketches for the Shard online. I did not get permission to reproduce them here, so you get my artist's impression. But honestly, his early drawings looks like this, just a triangle for the Shard and some little boxes to represent the rest of the skyline. It's a very simple sketch, a very quick sketch, a bit dumb in a way. But it carries something of the scale and grandeur that would eventually become the Shard. And that very real, very physical building that you can go and touch up that London would not exist were it not for this picture. Well, not this picture, obviously. Another example, this time from long, long ago. Cave paintings, these scenes of hunts from our ancient past. I like to think about them anyway, because it kind of blows my mind. It's like our ancient ancestors are speaking to us from beyond the eons. Even if that message is nothing more profound than a handprint on a wall that says, we were here. But the other thing that's amazing about cave paintings is that people that know about this stuff tell us that there's this period when the first early humans turned up, started building more complex societies and communities, started using fire and working out how fire worked, inventing and using more and more complex tools. There's a period between those early humans doing recognizably human stuff, between them turning up and inventing language. And then an even huger track of time before we worked out any way of writing that stuff down. So that means for a hugely significant part of our development as a species, the main means we had to talk to each other was grunts and shrugs and drawing. Drawing was necessary to bring us to where we are today. And so I think it's slightly insane if we today drop drawing as a means of looking for a way to our future, both individually and as a species. So I want to encourage you to be people who draw more. Draw in your office meetings, draw when you're on the train, draw in the margins of your books. I promise you that the more you draw, the more you will find that you have something to say. And may you never think of the doodles that you do while you're on the phone talking to your friend, those drawings that you do to help you think. Don't ever think of them as trivial. And may you be a people who put to death that voice in your head that says, I can't. Thank you.